My name is Arthur, and I live in Edinburgh, Scotland. I'm 22 years old and recently graduated from university, just beginning to step into the real world. That night was supposed to be special. It was my friend's birthday, and we celebrated at a small bar, sharing laughs and creating memories late into the night. As the party ended, I found myself driving home, alone, down a dark and deserted road. The night was quiet, almost eerily so, with an unsettling silence that hung heavily in the air. The wind howled, whistling through the empty streets. As I drove along, I noticed a lone figure standing by the side of the road. It was a young woman. She stood still, with golden hair that flowed in the night wind, and a striking red coat that seemed to glow under the dim streetlight. Beneath the red coat, she wore a white dress, which made her look even more ethereal against the darkness. She looked beautiful and hauntingly out of place, as though she belonged to another world entirely. I slowed down, drawn by her beauty and the mystery surrounding her. She turned her gaze toward me, her blue eyes meeting mine as I rolled down my window. Her expression was gentle yet pleading, and she asked in a soft voice, "Sir, if it's not too much trouble, may I have a lift?" I hesitated, feeling an odd unease creep up my spine. But her vulnerability, combined with her beauty, convinced me. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She climbed into the back seat and closed the door, and I felt an unexpected chill fill the car. "So, where do you live?" I asked, attempting to break the silence. But instead of replying, she handed me a small piece of paper with an address scrawled on it. I took it, noticing her hands were pale and cold. "My name is Arthur," I offered, hoping for a response that would ease my growing anxiety. She looked at me through the rearview mirror with a faint smile and finally said, "Mary Tailish." I tried to keep the conversation going, searching for something to make the silence less oppressive. "Do you have any hobbies, Mary?" I asked, hoping to learn more about this mysterious stranger. Her voice was soft and distant. "I used to play with dolls when I was little, but I can't anymore." There was a strange sadness in her tone that I couldn't ignore. I forced a smile. "What about dancing? You look like someone who would enjoy dancing." Her expression shifted to one of sorrow, her gaze dropping. "I loved dancing. But I can't do that anymore either." A shiver ran down my spine. Her words carried a strange finality that felt both tragic and otherworldly. We drove in silence until we passed an old cemetery. She suddenly spoke, her voice stronger than before, "Please, stop here." I looked at the cemetery entrance, shadowed and unwelcoming. "Mary, it's not safe for you to be out alone at this hour," I replied, concerned. "Don't worry about me, Arthur," she said, reaching for her red coat. She slipped it off and handed it to me. "Please take this to my home." Before I could respond, she opened the door, stepped out, and disappeared into the shadows without another word. The eerie chill that had accompanied her seemed to linger in the car, and I was left holding her coat, feeling a growing sense of dread. I drove to the address Mary had given me, my heart pounding. The address led me to an old, stately home, its exterior cloaked in darkness, with a single dim light flickering from within. I took a deep breath, knocked on the door, and was greeted by an older woman who looked exhausted and worn. "Excuse me, I'm here to return Mary Tailish's coat," I said, handing her the red coat. As soon as I mentioned Mary's name, her eyes filled with tears, and she began to cry. She ushered me inside, and the atmosphere in the home was both beautiful and haunting. The walls were adorned with pictures of Mary, her face frozen in youthful innocence. "Mary was my daughter," the woman said through her tears, "but she's been gone for 3 years now." I froze, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. She explained that Mary had been abducted one night while walking home. For 2 days, they searched everywhere, only to find her body in a nearby forest. Her death had been brutal, her eyes were removed, her heart was missing, and her left hand had been severed. The old woman's voice broke as she described it, and I struggled to process what I had just heard. I felt a cold dread settling over me. I gave her a ride tonight," I stammered, showing her the piece of paper with the address. Her eyes widened with a mixture of fear and sorrow. And she whispered, "Mary's spirit has been sighted by others before. But only those she has a reason to seek out." After leaving the house, I hurried back to my car, hoping to escape the chilling story in the eerie memories it had dredged up. As I climbed into the driver's seat, I instinctively looked into the rearview mirror, and there she was. Mary sat in the back seat, but this time, she no longer looked human. Her eyes were dark and hollow, and her skin had taken on an unnatural pallor. She smiled, but it was not the gentle smile from before, it was twisted, unsettling. Her voice echoed through the car, "Thank you for helping me, Arthur." I felt rooted to my seat, unable to move. Unable to even breathe. My heart raced as her ghostly figure faded away, leaving the car cold and empty. I was left in silence, unable to comprehend what had just happened. For days, I couldn't shake the image of Mary's hollow eyes and her haunting smile. I searched online, trying to learn more about Mary Tailish, and discovered a legend tied to her story. It was said that anyone who encountered Mary's spirit and didn't help her would meet the same horrific fate she had suffered. But those who showed kindness were spared, saved from the vengeance her spirit sought. To this day, the memory of that night haunts me. I see Mary's face every time I drive past the cemetery, every time I find myself on a dark and empty road. Her tragic story and her chilling presence are reminders of the unknown mysteries that linger in the dark. I pray that Mary's spirit has finally found peace and that her restless soul no longer has to roam the desolate roads of Edinburgh, and whenever I'm alone on a quiet night, I remember her words, the sorrow in her voice, and hope that I never encounter another spirit in search of help or revenge. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with even more spine-tingling tales and mysterious encounters. Your support helps us bring you the best in ghost stories and paranormal mysteries. Join us, if you dare.